Hi, I'm Danger Dan Jers, the host and GM of the D&D Real Play podcast, D&D Dark. Join us on Wednesdays for an absurd, over-the-top comedy horror adventure, starring some of history's most infamous monsters.
I'm Ben Magnet. I play Mary Frankenstein, our barbarian.
I am Daniel Cruz. I am playing Imhotep the Mummy, our cleric.
I'm Jordan, and I play Larry Talbot, a lycanthropic warlock.
I am Grayson, playing Jack Griffin, the Invisible Man, the party's rogue.
I am Aaron. I play the Phantom of the Opera, our bard.
For more information, go to dndarkpodcast.com and listen to us anywhere you find podcasts.
Let's go. Master of all things tabletop. With the Paladins of Podcast. They ruin the games you love by talking rules that suck, how to build kick-ass encounters, destroy worlds, and really get your players invested. So go ahead and throw that fistful of dice at someone. Because we're going on a side quest.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Side Quest with Paladins of Podcast, Rob and Eli.
Hi.
Hi, Eli.
I'm Eli.
The delay, every time. Gets me every time.
It's a dramatic pause.
A funny story is I had a friend when I was in high school who would have his voicemail on his cell phone set up. He'd be like, hey. And so I'd start talking. I'm like, I just got you. We're on voicemail. Every time. Fell for it. Every time. So I eventually just started calling him, and I wouldn't even let it answer or anything. I just hang up and let him call me back. I'm like, nope, I fall for this too often.
Quite the power move. I know more people that don't even have anything set up for their voicemail than people that have things set up, much less any funny ones. Give me funny ones.
When you say not set up, you mean it goes to ring and says, sorry, this person hasn't set up a voicemail yet?
Yeah, I know several people that haven't done that. Or it's one of those ones where it just reads the number. We're trying to reach 354.
Yep. I really don't know my buddy's number. I could be dialing the wrong person at this point. So, yeah, I get it. Otherwise, how have things been over the last week?
Sadly, my game didn't run. We had some conflicts, and people couldn't quite make it. So it's one of the few times that we don't end up playing.
Usually you guys have a plan, but
yeah, and usually we do like a protege adventure, or we'll play with less people and play something different. But I had a BattleTech game to go to, so
perfect opportunity.
Exactly. How did your table go? Because you had a vote, right, about the NPC to NPC. Scenes?
Yeah. So if our listeners remember last week's episode, we kind of talked a little bit about how we wanted to handle NPC to NPC scenes and interactions, things that our players can overhear and whatnot, because it's one of the hardest things for every DM to handle without drawing things out or subjugating it to simply you overhear these important bits of information. So I took the idea that we had to a table about the table read. Hey, I'll write up a small script. I'll randomly roll. You guys do the read out loud. And it was an overwhelming, yeah, probably not, but maybe. So everybody said that they would be willing to give it a try, except for one player. And the one player's hang up was that he already invests time into bringing one character to life. He doesn't really want to have to bring another character to life. I told him, you don't got to worry about that. I do all the writing. You could just read it stereotypical monotone if you wanted to. You could Ben Stein this. So I don't know, maybe. But everybody else is up for trying it at least once, and not obviously every time, just the important ones. But
so do you have a moment in mind then to do this table read?
No, not yet, because chances are the other option that I have is I will either just continue on as I have been, which they're okay with because it offers no change, or I will end up fabricating audio files for them to listen to, which they're way more keen on, especially if I hire somebody off of Fiverr to do different voices.
Yeah, I'm always hesitant to spend too much money on player aids, especially ones that are limited. That would be my one concern.
Same, but at the same time, I really want to give it a try. So I might do like a few really big ones like that. I might do a small generic style table read, depending.
What's your goal in introducing this? Like, do you have something in mind to reveal or show the players? Like, what is this going to add to, and give to the players at the table?
I want them to be completely immersed in that particular interaction, whether it be just email bits of information. I don't want to hand feed them the important bits. I want them to literally overhear and decide what they feel is important. Kind of like when you're eavesdropping, like this is what I brought back.
Interesting. Yeah, do you have something to, like, a plot line going on, or a big bad evil guy, a BBEG?
There are 3 instances that I know for a fact I really want to use this. One of them is essentially the big bad evil guy's monologue, because they all monologue. Every single one of them will monologue. And I told you about my big bad evil guy is not actually a character, but a decision. It's a moral choice. So I want to put as much production value into that end game as possible. The other one is overhearing bits and pieces of conversation between 2 individuals that are talking about conflicting interests on the good side and bad side of their respective positions of power and how they want to play out with each other.
Oh, wait, I think we might be on slightly different wavelengths.
Okay.
When you were doing the NPC to NPC interaction, is the party also there?
Sometimes. Usually it's they're over-listening, overhearing, eavesdropping, spying, etc. It's generally behind-the-scenes scenarios. When they are blatantly right there, standing in front of 2 NPCs talking, I will give key sentences from each one and then describe the overall tone and generalities of the rest of the conversation.
Yeah, because when I was picturing this as a scene where the player characters are nowhere near interacting with the scene, not even overhearing, the sort of situation where your party's on Yavin 4 preparing in their fighters and you get a cutscene inside the Death Star, like basically a way of giving the players information that they would otherwise have no idea about.
Yeah, we are.
Sort of thing.
I mean, like, we're close, but you're right. Different pages here. Totally don't really provide other information on that aspect. Like, if they don't get it, they don't have it. I don't give it to them, and I don't do a cut scene like, hey, this is what's going on with the bad guys right now. Like, they have to actively investigate. So,
and that's usually how I am in my fantasy games.
Okay.
But my fantasy games are much more low fantasy kind of, it's grueling, it's dark, you're slogging through mud, you're near death. But for my sci-fi games, I love those sort of scenes where it's outside, it's kind of outside information. Because a lot of the times I play more narrative games for sci-fis. And so with the players having more narrative control, giving them insight to the bad guys can kind of give them insight to what I'm thinking about for, like, the direction of the game.
Okay.
And so it kind of makes... We're not all on exactly the same page, but we're closer.
Okay, that makes sense. And I can definitely see how it's applicable, usable, and it seems like something I would really enjoy. I'd probably get lost in the cutscenes. I'd end up really enjoying them and waiting for the next one, because I'm like that. When I was younger, for example, I liked the commercials more than the actual cartoons. So,
well, is that a bad thing?
No, it's just not everybody's play style. So, one of those kind of
I
things.
mean, I think if like the goal of these would be to have players that would be interested in seeing these next cutscenes.
That's true.
Right? So that would be a success.
I would agree. So I like it. But other than that, yeah, the vote was good, and I had my really first.
What was the vote, like the for and against? What was the tally?
It was so evenly divided. I have to decide which one I want to do when I decide I want to do it.
Oh, so it was a tie.
Yeah, but not like a strict vote for one or the other. Everybody, pretty much nobody cared. They were all willing to do anything. So they were like, yeah, whatever, we're going to go with the flow. Just hit us with it, Rob. Whatever you decide to do it. That's what they get. So I said, all right, you guys are going to get what I give you. And they're cool with that. But I also had my first really big cross campaign event happen.
Okay.
So maybe not cross campaign, cross party event.
Oh, like between your two different groups?
Yes, something happened caused by one group, and it will actively affect the other group as well. And I'm really curious to see how they handle it on Saturday.
So what was the action one group did?
All right. So if any of my players are currently listening, I need them to skip this section because this is actually really revealing of the game. One of my parties, the contingency heroes, were found at a found themselves at a Dragon Wing monastery, lost in the Ashland Mountains. And legend says in the Ashland Mountains, deep below, a powerful dragon rests. And this
and is this something that the players know, or is this your lore?
This is lore that they have found to be true, or at least every NPC that has given them information believes it's true. So it is true. He actually rests below the mountain. Okay. And the history between this dragon and the world itself spans back to its creation, when it was created by Animar Lucero himself. They were friends. And the dragon slumbers with a constant scrying spell for his friend Animar to find out where he was, because he made a decision many years ago in order to try to save his plane, his demi-plane, the world and all of its inhabitants. And the dragon, who did not start off as a dragon, but a powerful wizard.
Okay, but what did the players do with this dragon?
You got to get all the information first. I know you want it. I know. But the reason that it happened is because of the interaction between the two NPCs. So it still falls into what we were just talking about.
Wait, so how did the players trigger it then?
All right, so it comes down to the players ended up having a guided meditation, and in the meditation, one of the players physically seen Animar himself, his location, which triggered the dragon's scrying ability because he's seen them both, and the link went through the two of them.
Oh, so how did the player see Animar?
Through his guided meditation vision.
Okay, so was that a player? The player asked to find Animar?
No, he was hunting down little bits of lore that alluded to what exactly the heart of Animar is, and that was the vision that he got, was what the true heart of Animar itself is. So when the scrying spell went off, it angered the dragon, whose name is Rake, to disturb him from his hibernation, so to speak, and it cracked the obsidian mountains in the Ashlands and caused the caldera of the volcano to...
Oh, is this dragon like...
Massive.
World-spanning?
Not world-spanning, but massive. Mountainous.
Okay.
And when it cracked the mountains and it triggered the volcanic activity for the first time in centuries to push cubic metric tons of ash and soot into the sky, darkening the sky, and that effect scientifically will travel the world and affect my other party. So when they ever...
So you're... The effect between two parties is that the weather is going to change?
I hate that you just minimized it that much. But yes. And...
Well, the players aren't going to see or hear all that aspect, are they?
They will feel the rumblings of an earthquake. Because the distance between them is only, I want to say it's close to 800 miles. So they'll be able to see the blackening of the sky in the distance, and when they eventually make it to the ashlands, they will see the crack, because that forever changes the landscape.
So is the player that had the vision of Animar going to be able to connect them having that vision with the clouds darkening and the earth cracking open? That seems pretty apocalyptic.
He totally feels like he is the cause that it happened. But he hasn't connected all of the little dots that say that while he is not the cause or the effect, he is the link between the two. So, and I asked them, I said, all right, now that we have this portion exposed, are you guys going to push the storyline here, or are you guys going to continue on and let the story itself just sort of naturally occur? And they chose to...
Wait. So you presented the party with a decision. What? Re-explain that.
All right, so I was like, all right, you guys just found out some big shit. You can either push to go down this path, or you guys can keep going about your own missions that you want to go on, and everything else will just happen as it happens. And kind of like, you're going to choose to do a side quest, or are you going to go on the main story? And like, we're going to keep doing side quests, and we're just going to accidentally complete the main story.
So that you presented them with a decision to follow this main quest or keep doing side quests.
Yep.
And they've chosen to do a bunch of side quests. Yep. And then the side quests are going to complete the main quest?
Yeah, the main quest is going to slowly continue regardless. Like, they're going to keep getting bits of information. They're going to keep putting all the pieces together. They're going to keep putting all of the positions in place for everything to continue to kick off.
So what you're saying is your main quest has a timeline on it, and so as the players are doing other things, like, time is going to progress, and they'll hear rumors and stories and events that happen on that timeline will affect the players.
Slowly, maybe, just not at a predetermined schedule or scale. When they have information that sounds like it would affect the main quest, it affects the main quest. And vice versa. My other party does it too. They're less concerned about that. So.
What do you mean by a piece of information helps complete the main quest?
So, for example, one of my players in the Contingency Hero game, he has been purely digging into every bit of lore he can find. He will hunt it down. He will find it. And anytime he gets close to uncovering a little bit more, there's usually something that ties into that as well. Like I said, the constant scrying from Rake the dragon towards Animar. So when he ever has a link between the two, or Animar makes some sort of presence on the plane by any degree, it's usually an interaction with the party, especially the guy who's digging out lore, angers the dragon.
So you as a GM are tying all of their side quests and their further interests into this main storyline that you have?
Yes. And I don't have like a fully developed story, but I got two parties working on it together. So they're pushing it.
Is the party aware of like that pull towards the main quest?
No. And as of everything right now, it's all based off of their knives, backstories, and information that they've gathered in game so far. So the biggest thing is that I've got the tent poles to the story in place, and I've got the 2 tent poles for the end game. I've got all the tent poles for bad guys, and I've got all of their knives and backstories to be little tent poles that they want to run around between.
So how many times? Because it sounds like you made this ask to them as players and not the characters of following this main quest or doing side quests, right?
Yeah, I asked the players, not the characters.
How many times have you asked that?
Once.
Okay. I would just, like, if it was the second or third time, I'd be concerned that maybe they just want to keep doing side quests.
No, they're kind of happy with the side quest. They don't know what's going on with essentially the main story quest. Like, they're getting the little bits of information. They just don't know what to do with it. They don't know where to go with it, or they know that it's important. They just don't have all the pieces yet. So that's why I just slowly keep feeding it. Which is awesome, because now that something big has happened, I can totally let it lay real low for an extended period of time. The world history has been going on for thousands of years. So this cat and mouse game between 2 friends has literally been going on for an extended period of time. It makes absolute sense for them to really go dormant and not have to worry about it for a while.
So talk to me about these weather effects.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, for one party, you're going to have darkness and earthquakes. Mm-hmm. How's that going to actually affect them?
All right. So the party contingency heroes who's on the current mountains, when a volcano starts to erupt or push soot and ash into the sky, all the biggest particles fall down first. And because they're on glass mountains, it's not like this acts to be a very what's the gritty, not like a very it's not adhesive, it's not abrasive, it's not sticky, it's not like an adhesive. So things become much more slippery, much like you are in rain. So if they're on anything slippery, there's more reflex saves involved. Because they're on a glass mountain as well, everything is sharp edged and pointy and jagged, and they have way more likeliness to encounter cuts, bruises, scrapes, etc., and a lot more reflex saves.
Mechanically, you are going to introduce reflex saves when? Is it going to be like per day? You go like, while adventuring, roll a reflex save.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, well, as we're exploring the mountain. All right, as you're exploring the mountain, you're gonna need this many reflex saves this often. And because it affected the caldera, the volcanic mountain, they are in an area right now going through leftover ruins that they have to make a non-lethal fortitude save to deal with constant heat effects. And that save DC actually increases by 1 every hour. So the longer they are exposed, the more difficult it becomes.
And so you have reflex saves that's going to be doing damage to them. How often are they typically entering scenes with damage? Or does it drain their resources? Or does the part... Like, how often does the party rest, I guess, before continuing on? How often do they push their resources to the limit?
They don't usually push their resources to the limit. They will actually end up pushing their life as close to dying as possible before they start using any of their resources, whether it be health potions, healing potions, skills, spells, etc. And then they will literally sink everything into one moment and then like, yep, we're just going to rest. And we'll start again tomorrow. Many times they have gone through 30 minutes of adventuring and like, all right, yep, no, we got to rest until tomorrow.
What do you think about that?
I think it's ridiculous, but again, the area that they're in, aside from environmental effects, this isn't really super inhabited by wandering monsters or creatures that are just going to come attack them, or bandits yet. But they're getting it. They're getting close.
Interestingly enough, Hackmaster has a rule in the Game Master's Guide where if the party is having less than, I think it's 3 encounters a day, or 3 encounters before like a significant rest, then as a GM you're supposed to dock experience points.
Really?
From the encounters that the party is having.
And that makes sense. I mean, it's not like if they have one encounter, I don't give them a lot of bonus experience. Like, I make sure that their experience points are definitely leveled out enough where it seems fair. So yeah, if they're not having a heavy encounter session, it's, I don't want to say measly, but it feels measly based on what I normally give them. So,
so is that like, do you view it as an issue that your players are resting after one toughen, or like one encounter takes them down, they use resources, they rest?
No, I don't think so. As a DM, I understand the tactic and it makes sense. Like, it's tactically, it's a good scenario. Think about video games where you're allowed to rest whenever, as long as there's no bad guys around. You drain all your life, then you run back to a cot and you rest for 24 hours and you're good to go. You know, it seems ridiculous. In-game time moves at a retarded pace, but you are still in a position where the storyline is waiting on you. I think it's cheesy. It kind of sucks sometimes, but I'm not going to tell them, no, you can't take a rest.
Yeah, that I don't actually dock their experience.
No,
because I've never felt that my party has done that. Really, like it never feels kind of gamey or egregious. They rest when they're all extremely hurt, and more often than not, when they're hurt, they push the envelope quite a bit. So I've never felt the need to do it, but I have had 3.5 games that did have some of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, it can get ridiculous, but at the same time, it's I don't want to say worthwhile tactic, but it's a tactic.
Are there any other methods to trying to coax your party to attempt more, I guess, more dangerous missions, or push the envelope when their resources are low?
I have once told them they can't rest while bad guys are around.
I think I've heard play like that where it's safe havens. You can only take a long rest when you reach a place that's a safe space, not one where you're on guard.
Yep, I have done stuff like that before, and I don't personally like it, only because it just makes more shit for me to have to track, and that gets irritating at times.
What more do you have to track?
Because I like to make sure my encounters are not 100% random. I build an encounter, and then if it's a random encounter, it's still a built random encounter. I got to keep track of kind of where that encounter should take place, or at least the vicinity. And then if they haven't defeat that encounter, I like to make sure it's still in the area. So I got to make sure it's in the area so they can or cannot rest. And then if they got to find it, etc. Because I don't just generally be like, all right, this is the encounter you have to find for you to rest. Here it is.
Well, I think the idea of doing safe spaces for long rests isn't for like in the middle of the woods where the monster may or may not. It's if there is a threat at all, they can't rest there. The only place safe havens are places where you truly know they're safe.
I guess that's
in an inn, in your castle, in the meadow of a unicorn.
I guess that's fair too. But granted, I mean, my castles are usually more dangerous than my woods. So
maybe so.
Spies break into castles. They don't break into the forest.
You got me there.
So, but you were really excited because you got really excited about the weather thing. What do you do with weather? Now I was curious as we sidetracked down this entire path of safe havens.
Well, no, this is important. We're talking about, like, you were just saying that you changed you decide upon encounters based, like, do you decide depending on their resources to if they should face an encounter or not?
No, I actually designed their encounter based on the cool shit that they should be able to do. So I have a rough idea of what everybody's abilities are, and I'm like, all right, everybody should be able to pull off a little bit of cool stuff. They should all be able to get to use some of their abilities. These encounters are generally built on that aspect. Not the resources, because resources can dwindle, they can lose, they can forget, and whatnot. So it's based on their abilities.
But do you keep track of when those abilities are up or available?
No. No. And like I said, I generally end combat after somebody does. At least everybody gets to do at least one really cool thing, or there are too many cool things done by one player that just end up rolling through combat easily. I might toss in another one unplanned. So
interesting. I've been thinking about running and using weather in some of my games and more weather-like effects, but I'm interested about the effects, because I don't necessarily want it to be just damage. I kind of want it to try to affect maybe how they go about things. So I'm not quite sure how I want to approach it yet, or how I want the weather to interact with them, maybe on a mechanical level.
what kind of weather are you thinking in the immediate?
I'm thinking of weather, but I'm also thinking of like situational modifiers where, like, in combat instances or in certain areas, certain effects can happen. Like you have on the mountains when the ash is falling, it's slippery. And man, now I just seem like I'm rambling.
You're not rambling.
It's just incoherent. I've just been thinking a lot about weather.
Okay. So I have a friend. When he was in prison years ago, he learned how to play AD&D, second edition, and he created an entire weather system. In fact, he would plan out the entire year worth of weather, and you would go through. He would keep track of days and weather for wherever you are, and not just like on a local scale, but a grand scale across the entire globe.
I wish I had that amount of time, but I'm not willing to go to prison.
Yeah, to be fair, that's all he had was time. So he was talking to me about it because he does plan out weather so intricately, because weather plays a huge part in his games. Because when it's dark and rainy, visibility is more limited. Even if you have dark vision or low light vision, rain is an obstructive, so you can't see through it because it's a physical barrier. He told me things that I'd seen before in oh man, what is the name of the old school game? Not Dragonlance. It was the maybe it was Dragonlance?
Roll Master? What?
No, the setting that it was is in the desert.
Oh, Dark Sun.
Yes, thank you. Dark Sun. Dark Sun is essentially you're making fortitude saves as long as you're traveling during the day and you're taking damage, heat, exhaustion. It's harder to move. You can't move as far because you're trying to conserve your energy. But at night, it's almost the exact opposite. It's freezing cold, but you can move farther. You have to bundle up. You have to figure out how to survive in the two extremities of heat and cold, very similar to the desert. And my friend was telling me about how he has integrated some of those aspects as well. Rain.
I guess my biggest concern with introducing that is I don't think the game is going to be entirely like in a desert. So I worry about adding and introducing too many like extra rules into situations where they might just be like, you know what, let's not bother and go back to this other climate. So
they might.
I want it to be. Yeah, I guess if I do introduce it, I need to also introduce aspects that allow the players to navigate it and survive it at the same time. Of course, like hot weather gear, camels.
Well, what about starting with something small? Like it is an absurdly hot day, or it's incredibly cold. If they were record keeping, this would be the coldest on record for the last 250 years. And so every now and then they have a day of extreme weather that they have to adjust for, make saves for, deal with, and gauge it from there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I mean, I think that's totally reasonable. You're out on the West Coast. It rains a lot, right?
Oh, yeah, it does.
Things get slippery when it rains, right?
That's correct.
Whereas I am from the Midwest, and it's generally humid and gray, but not always a lot of rain. Dry and 70-ish was typical weather. Every now and then, though, I might get some of your weather. Totally applicable to make a one-day save kind of thing. A few saves for one day.
How do you like to blend those effects into your combats? Like when you have reflex saves on this mountain, right, to take damage, how would you incorporate that into an encounter on that glass mountain?
Variable is the best way I can describe it. I like to make things.
All right, we're building an encounter on the side of a glass mountain.
All right, it's absolutely more difficult if you're going to try to charge. Okay, let's say ash is raining down because I used ash from what happened earlier. So things are slippery. If you're going to charge, it's going to be considered like difficult terrain. You either have to have the ability to do so to charge through difficult terrain. You can't charge through difficult terrain, or you're absolutely 100% going to try to do it regardless, and you're going to make a reflex save to see if you can at least attempt it. Those are usually how I'll roll for those few things. Depending on the player, what he wants to do, and whatnot will determine exactly the level of difficulty that I'm going to push for him to succeed at first.
Now, like you've just described that, right? If a charge happens, they either need to be able to move through difficult terrain or make a reflex save.
Yep.
Are you going to tell the players that at the start of the encounter, or are you going to wait for Bob the Barbarian to declare a charge? Or what if Bob the Barbarian just does a double move or triple move, or like a run?
When Bob the Barbarian lets me know what he's going to do, that's when I tell him the difficulties of his actions. Excuse me. And I wait that way. I do it that way in particular because I want them to be able to try it in the moment and not think about, well, if it's not going to work out, I'm not going to try it. Because their character would absolutely try to do it regardless. And more often than not, when I'm like, hey, you want to do this, which is cool, but these are the difficulties, they usually say, let me go ahead and try anyway. And that's what I want to see. I don't want them to say, well, I'm likely going to slip and fall, so I'm not going to use this tactic. That's my bread and butter.
That's a good way to handle it, I think.
Thank you. How
do you have players that ask you about that? Like, does someone say, like, if you say that, you're like, well, you're charging, so will a player say, oh, will I have to make that check if I do this? Or generally does it just kind of get shelved?
That will come from more experienced players or players who have come across that situation frequently. However, more often than not, they don't generally recall. Their first thought is, let's do this cool stuff and see how it plays out from there. So, kind of.
How often do you use or reuse mechanics like that reflex when someone charges?
When somebody charges, it's not super frequent. I generally use more reflex when it comes to getting out of the way of an environmental effect, such as the rolling boulder from Indiana Jones, the pit trap that they try to jump out of the way of, shooting arrows from mechanical traps, those kind of things.
Now, are you flexible in situations like this for someone to use, like if a trap or an environmental effect, could someone use a skill instead of reflex or your 3 saves?
Yeah, I would allow somebody, in this case, we're using reflex, so it would translate to acrobatics. I'd allow somebody to make an acrobatics check. More often than not, the individual does not have a high acrobatics, but has a decent reflex. So, depending on what they want to do, I usually tie it to if there's danger of harm and damage, or it stops them from doing something in combat, it'll be the save maneuver versus the skill check. But
So like a skill check might be more of a modifier or a slight penalty, but then a save is when it's actually you're taking damage or you're giving damage to the player.
generally, yeah, that's my general rule of thumb. Not 100%, but I'd say 90% of the time that's how I work it. Dead space.
Sorry, I just got
It's okay.
Massively pinged. Ping, 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 ping.
It's
ping.
okay.
Excitingly, I'm doing a one shot on Friday.
Yeah?
So I'm super excited.
What's your one shot about?
So-
Tell us about it before we run out of time.
I'm playing in it. So I'll tell you about it next week.
Totally unfair. Totally unfair. So I got a question because as we're getting close to the end of the episode and we're getting closer to August, how are you looking on your Gen Con convention trip?
I'm not even thinking about it yet.
Still, when do you
because
start?
I have to think about GaryCon.
That's right.
GaryCon is in 3 weeks, and I am totally prepared.
That sounds totally like a bluff.
No, I'm ready for. I've got I'm running like 4 or 5 events. 3 of them are kind of demo events. One of them is a tournament, a Hackmaster tournament game from Gen Con a couple years back. And then another one is one of my own, my own little event I made.
Cool.
So that's the one I need to work on a little bit more.
Cool. Is it tied into your Dungeon 23 at all?
A little bit, yeah.
Good.
So I was trying to do them both at the same time.
Yep.
So that's why I need to get working on it.
That's fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm actually using the convention to try to test some of the encounters that I've like some of the rooms and some of the encounters. So since I've created all these rooms, these caverns, I figured the best way to test them is with actual players. So I'm gonna put them all on a giant kind of building encounter table. So where depending on what you roll, it'll influence the dice that you roll next on the table.
Okay.
And so I'm going to just toss all the caves and all the rooms I built on that, and then just see where they all end up.
Fair.
So-
Sounds exciting. Good.
Are you thinking about Gen Con already?
Yes, I got our room reservations taken care of, and right now I'm trying to actually parse who's going to be there for us to talk to, because once again we'll have our media pass, and I'm trying to get down the right people. There are a few people I want to follow up with, the few people that I want to make sure to hit up for the first time, and hopefully this year will go a little bit smoother.
Well, I guess I already have all my plans for Gen Con, because I usually stay with the Kenzerco folks. And then all my events were submitted already. So if you want to come and play some Hackmaster, you should.
I totally should, so long as I'm not busy. Speaking of, I got to get you a side quest shirt for Gen Con.
I'll wear it.
I will hopefully get it done.
Is the name Side Quest Sideways? Because I feel like it's a missed opera. I guess it's hard for legibility.
No, it's not sideways. It's just side quests. All right, guys. You know what? I'm going to wrap it up right there before Eli and I both ramble on for the next 20 minutes. Eli, any little bits of advice for the end of the episode?
Not advice, but gonna put it into words. I think I'm gonna put together that table, and I hope we can talk about it next week.
As long as one of us remembers.
Yep, I'll remember.
Sounds
I swear.
I will try to do so. I got a lot going on. So, guys, check us out online, epictablegames.com, or on Facebook at Epic Table Games. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Okay, new intro. We've changed the name, and we're still using the word paladin. Paladin. I mean, it hasn't been used in the English language in about 200 years, but okay.